All right, welcome back to the Clicks Happen podcast. I'm back again with Eric Bushaw from Blue Pool Marketing, and we just wanted to have a discussion today a little bit about some of the big changes that we're seeing within the SEO world, specifically with Google, and just have a little conversation about what Eric's seeing out in the world as it relates to search engine optimization, organic rankings, and all things marketing. Eric, how you doing?
Doing well, Nick. How are you?
Good, good. I'm excited to chat today. We got some good stuff to talk about. So I was hoping we could start and just open it up. The last time that we spoke, it was a lot about just how traditional search is changing, moving towards some of that AI mode stuff. And you went through a little bit of the history of Google's AI summaries, as they called it. But it's only been about a month or so since we last talked, but we're all getting used to the rate of change in the new age of AI. And so, what do you got for us? What's new? What are you seeing? What's interesting to you?
So, a couple things. The first one that comes to mind, and because it's kind of new, but it it seems like kind of the direction we expected things to go. Uh, OpenAI has announced that ChatGPT will have an instant checkout mode. So
Interesting.
basically what this is rather than, kind of what we had seen for the last year or two where, your AI, would be kind of a research tool and then you would go and find something that you wanted to buy. This is a direct integration and they do charge a fee for it. So
Sure.
interesting to note there. Right now, it is for U.S. Etsy stores. That's kind of where they
Very
opened it up.
cool.
They are going to expand it to Shopify, which is a big, that's a big universe of e-commerce websites, and then probably, move it on from there. But basically, this is, we used to call it Google's walled garden. This is ChatGPT's walled garden, where you can research, make a purchase, arrange payment, shipping, have it sent to you, all without leaving the universe of ChatGPT. Uh, so
Very
interesting.
interesting.
Uh, this right now is, and I'm going to air quote, organic. Although one of the organic inputs is it available on, ChatGPT instant checkout? So you can question how organic that really is. But I think it would be kind of silly not to expect that there'll be a paid placement option on here as this takes
Right.
off.
Right. So do you think this is the start of their ads platform?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think, there'd always been kind of a question on how they would, beyond the subscription model or beyond, businesses paying for tokens and all that kind of thing, how they would further monetize this tool. And I think this is the beginning.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's interesting. So how do you think Google's going to follow suit?
Yeah, I think Google's been kind of struggling with how to monetize, its AI, whether it's Gemini specifically or AI summaries on Google search. Um, Without cannibalizing their traditional ad revenue, because that was such a big, revenue driver for them. I think, somebody in Google management has kind of figured out, well, that is going to change. We need to, adapt to that change. Um, I think it's interesting to see how they do it though, because I can see, and this is just opinion, but like a chat GPT or something that does have a subscription based model. I can see this being, subscription based or advertising based, right?
Mm,
Similar to any number of other things, right? If you opt in to see ads, then it can be free or at reduced cost. Uh,
right, right, right. I didn't even think about that, the subscription. But Google's got a big problem on their hands, and it's the speed at which this AI overviews or mode or whatever has taken over, and people actually are preferring that over traditional search. And I think they've had to make changes quicker than they really wanted to. I don't
mhm.
know that they got caught flat-footed. Maybe that's a little harsh of a statement, but they were definitely not bleeding edge. And I think they're being forced to get there real quick.
Yeah, I think. they there are probably people in Google who saw this coming or anticipated some of this, but when you're a publicly held giant that's the size that Google is, convincing big shareholders who want that revenue next quarter that things are changing is probably a much heavier lift.
Right,
To where
right,
OpenAI, I mean, it seems like they had basically they could, get a blank check from whatever big technology platform wanted to get a piece of their business. So I think that's probably the old thing that you say, follow the money. That's probably what it is. Google
right,
was
right.
making so much money; they were so dominant in that search market that it was hard to change. They didn't want to.
Yeah. So what are you seeing now from last time we talked about kind of the split that's inherently going to happen between, you know, AI summaries or you can go generative AI versus traditional search. And how do you feel that that's changed since we last spoke? Because I think um I personally use both still. They're very distinct use cases though now. I would say that I'm probably 70/30 chatbot to search engine. When I'm going to a search engine is because I'm actually looking for a specific site, or like I'm looking for a specific vendor or a brand or something, and I'm doing that quick search using a couple keywords because that's actually faster for me than using the generative. But I'm also finding that my little brain wants more information that what a search result would give back. And so I find that I'm tending to go to these chatbots just to even, sometimes it's both. I get an output from GPT, and then I'll do a little bit deeper research online. Like I'll go to one of those websites. What are you seeing from a split now?
So I think you've kind of latched on to what we're seeing. I just reviewed some data, here in the last week or two that Google has said so far in 2025, organic click through is down, roughly 30%, which is when you think about that, that's kind of an eye popping number. But organic conversions are not. They're holding steady. So the working theory behind that, in my mind, would be that what you're describing, the use of the AI agents, whether it is directly on Google through the summary or through a ChatGPT or a Perplexity, is making your search, if you want to say search, it's making whatever you're looking for easier to find. It's making it more efficient. So it would make sense that you might see fewer organic clicks because there's just less wasted clicks, basically. There are where you would just get, in the past, you'd get like a big list of links and you'd have to click through to a few of them to get to what you wanted. Now you have, an intelligent agent saying, I think this might be what you want. Maybe here's some options here. You just get more upfront. It's kind of like we were describing the last time we talked. We're learning how to search in greater detail. We can ask more
Right.
complicated questions. The old, if I walked up to you, Nick, and said, pizza near me, it would sound kind of funny to do it that way, but that's how we were used to searching for things.
Right, right.
Now we can ask and get reasonable answers to more detailed questions. So it's one of those things that we just need to adapt to as marketers. Searchers are adapting already, to just kind of learn that less traffic doesn't necessarily mean less business or less quality. It kind of means less junk in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and potentially, if you see that down the road, in ads platform, potentially, better quality click-throughs or more, the cost for a conversion goes down because you're actually getting people that you're highly targeted where they need to go. Um, so then from a strategy standpoint, a 30% shift is pretty significant in a relatively short amount of time. And I keep going back to mobile and desktop because when mobile phones got internet, I know as a old school web developer, I hated that period because now we had to design sites for, 4 or 5 different device sizes, right? And even when you're doing that, it wasn't actually hitting all the different device sizes. But I do think that I think the transition on from desktop to mobile was a much more slow grow. And then it hit a point where it's just everybody's on their phones now. And the way I kind of see it now is like if you're at work, you're on your desktop. If you're at home, you're on your phone. Like those are the split. Less people sitting on the couch with their laptop and more just scrolling through. Um, but how are you accounting for that with, a shift that's so drastic, and the tactics are changing? So what are you doing to kind of account for that, get in front of it? And is there a lot that actually changes from a back end on page organic SEO strategy?
So one, and we kind of discussed some of this last time, but I've seen some confirmation since then from a little company called Microsoft that basically says, start with just making sure that your content is available, that it's well organized. Things like, headline tags being what they were meant to be all the time, right? And H1 describes what your page is about. H2 is what that section is about. Um, FAQ content. If we think of an answer engine, let's provide it with answers. We kind of talked about that in detail last time also. But digging a little bit deeper, again, just doing some research, the average, and there's a big range here, but the average response from ChatGPT is right from 30 to 86 words. So using a little bit of intelligence, we can say, all right, if the answers that we're providing to commonly asked user questions are way outside that range, how can we condense it a little bit? How can we make our content, you know AI summary friendly, basically?
Right.
Because the more we can provide a complete answer in that easily digestible range, the more likely it is that we can become the answer, which is really what we want. We want, our content to become the answer, or at least a significant part of the answer. Um, the other things that we've mentioned, schema markup.
Mm,
And again, Microsoft kind of confirmed, what we had said last time, is that, taking pieces of content and applying that code around them to say, this is exactly what this is, right? This
right.
is my name. This is my phone number. This is the service I offer. This is a local business. Taking that detail, it's easy for those AI agents to take that information in. And the more clarity we have, in a not a very dissimilar way to how in the past we would look at local search and say we want citations, right? We want all that
Right,
information
right, right.
to match up so that it's trusted. Kind of the same idea. We want those AI agents to feel like they can to feel they're computers, right? They don't feel, but we want that information to seem like the trusted source.
Right. Well, they can calculate that. It's a signal of theirs, right? The consistency, you know, equals relevance or trustworthiness, or this is an actual place, and so that's what I'll recommend. The cool thing about this is that, you were saying something earlier about, we're optimizing now for the chat gpt's, summaries and pulling in these things. And I always get fearful when we're talking about optimizing for the robot versus the human being that's going to, interact with the website, the ad, or the product or service. And one of the cool things I think about this type of optimization is we're optimizing for a tech or software that is intended to kind of be human like in its approach to talking to you. And so, a lot of the like this, I love this tip here, 30 to 86 words. I had not heard that yet. And that's a really cool idea, in theory, because the reason they're putting it in that short of a thing is because they're condensing it down in a way that you can consume it and understand it in a quick way, but also gives you enough information. And so they're kind of augmenting their result for the human. And so we can kind of look at this approach as both, right? So that might just be a smart strategy, 30 to 86 words per FAQ period for just a human on your website to read, right? And so some of the tactics are aligning.
Yeah, and the thing is, I actually think that for a lot of content that you see out on the internet, that would be an improvement, right? For the
Right.
humans, right?
Right, right,
you
right.
know, the example that always comes to my mind is you look up a recipe right? Like, I like to cook, right?
Yes.
Hey, I want roasted golden potatoes or something like that, right? And what you get is this like history of the potato. Potatoes were used for, you get
Man.
like all this mess that is not what you want.
Right.
If if AI does anything beneficial for us, it may be that it steers us towards, oh, this is what I really want. I want to
Right.
know this snippet of information uh, without all the other mess.
Yeah, the
I think
gobbledygook
the
that sits around the recipe. Yeah.
yeah, your creative writing majors may hate it, but
Right.
but it may make it a little easier for everybody else.
Yeah. Well, so then do you think that's going to change content, like content creation in itself? We've always operated under a premise of around anywhere between 500 and 700 words for blog posts, and kind of keeping that rule for page content as well. Um, Now, I'm always of the mind you write the content for the person that wants to read it. And if you're writing that, it doesn't, I don't care how long it is. If it's engaging for that user type that you're trying to attract, then that's what it needs. So with that caveat though, do you think that's going to change how the content on the internet looks to us? Is it going to be more condensed and more, um, you know, FAQs on every single page? Do you see that being like a prolific thing, or is it a tactic that we're just using now as marketers?
I think what we need to do is kind of look at the purpose of a page and then kind of determine.
Yes.
But to give kind of a short answer, I do think something like an executive summary.
Mm,
It's not that long form content will just be completely irrelevant, but something like too long, don't read, or an
yeah, yeah,
executive
yeah.
summary that says, here's the main points, here's the details if you want more, right?
Right.
I think that's probably an improvement in a lot of ways.
100%. No, 100%. Yeah. On that same tip, one of the things I've been playing a lot with Perplexity, and in particular, they have a new product called Comet, which has an assistant that kind of sits on a sidebar of the screen. And the difference is that it now can see your screen. So, for instance, I was having it, practice scraping some content that went across a number of different pages, right? There was a pagination at the bottom, and it was kind of taking over the browser and going page by page and grabbing the content it needed. Now that's a little bit of a hacky use case, or like you're trying to get a lot of information. But another example is looking at it to, give me a summary of all of giant long page content. Give me the main points out of this. Give me what I should care about out of this, and I grab it. Now I just noticed Gemini did a similar thing, and I think any of these bleeding edge, search engines that are creating the AI browsers, you start to see their features end up in Google shortly after. Um, but I'm curious about that too. So how do you feel that, there's Dia, there's Perplexity, there's all these other AI search engines. Do you think they're kind of splashes in the pan? And you know, we're gonna play with them and then end up back at Google at some point? Or do you think they're gonna have an impact also on how we look at search? And um, Google forever has been the only one there. I guess Bing and Yahoo, but like really it's Google. Um, what do you think?
I think that the disruption has happened. Um, in the same way, go back however many years, but Netflix disrupted television. I think that AI search agents have disrupted the internet or disrupted Google, if you want to look at it that way. And it's not that it's going to go away, or that Google will just not be a thing anymore, or it's going to turn into the Netscape of of
No,
the
no, no.
you
I
know
don't
the,
think.
the
Yeah,
2020s or whatever it is. But the disruption, I think, is real, and I think it's here to stay. I don't think that one guy's opinion, but I don't think that all of the effort that's gone into developing these tools. Some will be more successful than others. Some will be more specialized within a certain niche than others. And putting on my stock market hat, I think there are probably a few that will probably just go bust, right? Because people are spending a lot
Yeah.
of money chasing whatever the next big thing might be. Um, but yeah, I don't see. I think the landscape has the information landscape has gotten more diverse, and I don't think that's going away.
Right. Well, I actually saw, I believe it was Perplexity. Google has this antitrust thing that they're working through. And Perplexity made some very audacious offer to them to buy Chrome, to take Chrome and help them, with their with their pending lawsuit. And I don't know if that was just trolling or if it was a serious serious offer, but um just interesting to me because I think you're right. I don't think Google goes away. And I also think that the democratization of a lot of this is happening in real time where um there's probably a day not too far from now when we look back and say, man, can you remember we used to like do a search and then we would search through a page of links and then we would go to the next page and we'd search for a page of links. And that will the thing that seems so normal to us today will seem like ancient history, I think relatively quickly. Because again, every single uh, podcast or interview or discussion I have, I always say, whatever we're saying today, it's good for today because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I think we said this last time, but it just feels, it depends on where you fall on the I'm okay or not okay with AI. And so for a lot of what I talk about with AI, I'm talking about in the most purest sense, the way that we can use it to make ourselves better and improve as humans. I'm choosing not to look at uh, the dark side of it for the moment, and just have some fun with it. And every day I feel like there's something new to play with. And the only problem I have is finding the time to like dig in and understand it at the depth I want to, you know?
Yeah, I hear you on that. We we have to do work that pays the bills, and it can be difficult to find the balance between that and something that you know is important but isn't necessarily paying off right this second. I
Right.
think that's the dilemma a lot of us have.
Yeah. Do you think there's any way, or have you seen any? So if I'm just a small business, right, and I have a local service area, um, how can uh, is there a way yet to see rank or to see citations through any of the generative models? Like, is there a way for me to see? I can see that I reduced search in Google. Like, I can see that we've had a drop in organic search. But do you know of any tooling yet that's allowing you to see the insight within, say, ChatGPT analytics?
There's a couple ways that you can. ChatGPT and Perplexity, I want to say one or two others, I'm trying to remember which ones specifically, will actually pass referral information into Google Analytics. So if a user did, click through from there, you can see that. And that is growing. Uh, there are some tools that are looking for brand mentions within AI summaries, which I think is also an interesting way to kind of gauge how well you're
Yeah.
doing. Um, the the detail though with a local brand summary, it also will kind of talk about your review profile. So one of those things that was always important but it's now more important because we don't have to go and look for your review profile. I don't have to scroll through a whole bunch of them. I can just get a
Right.
summary from this AI agent that says, well, users say they like this, they say they do not like that. So paying attention and managing that, as well as, it's less an SEO tactic, but more a marketing tactic. Pay attention if you have local competitors, pay attention to what people don't like about them and make sure that you're not doing that. Right.
Right.
And
Right.
this tool makes it even, these tools make it even easier to do that, right? Because you don't have to go and read through everything. You can get an easy instant summary that says, oh, people like this. It looks like they don't like that. Okay,
Yes.
well, if people don't like that, I'm not going to do that.
Sentiment analysis, right? Like, so that's interesting. I didn't think of it the way that you said it. So potentially maybe even more. So I was always surprised when reviews started becoming a ranking signal, um, how actually strong that ranking signal became. And uh, I like the way that you put that there. It's like I can go and get a quick sentiment analysis on my own business, but I can also look and see what my competitor's doing and get, rather than go through pages and pages of 500, 600,000 reviews, I can quickly get a summary of what's working, what's not, and start to change and implement.
Mhm.
Hey, I had a question about the attribution because this came up. We had a client that had sent over some content that they had created, right? And a lot of our clients are starting to use ChatGPT for some light content creation. And a lot of things we've been doing is consulting on, if you're going to do it this way, here's some gotchas. Here's some things we highly recommend that you put into place before just, having it right for you. Um, but they had sent over an article, a couple of pages of content, and in those pages they had interlinked their own site, right? And so they had, maybe it was a service page or was a location service page where it was a specific city or town, and then it was linking to the services page. What I noticed is in the content itself, in the link, it did have a UTM pointing back to ChatGPT. So the output of his content had his own links appended with a UTM for GPT. Now, I like the link attribution if I'm doing a general search and then I'm linking out to a website. That's good. That's good use. So now I can see where that user came from. I do not like that when they were creating it for an alternate use case that it also embedded that in there. um, and I don't know actually if that's, I know it doesn't happen on business accounts. So I don't know if that's an Easter egg that they throw in there to be able to, like, I think there's other meta data that's in ChatGPT output. And by the way, I'm using ChatGPT, but this goes for, broadly all of the different chatbots. Um, but I noticed that they started putting UTMs into those links, and that's a big no-no from my end. Like, I don't want the content that is on my website to be attributing ChatGPT for all those link clicks.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with you 100% on that. The only use case I could see for that is if you are basically you're doing an experiment, right? You're saying, I'm going to create this piece of content. And if it gets, you know, taken in and used as a summary on ChatGPT and someone clicks a link from there, then I guess
Mm,
I would want to know that. But it seems like kind of you would already have that as a referral, right? If someone has clicked a link directly from a ChatGPT summary, you're going to
right,
see that in your referral traffic.
right.
So yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't recommend that as a tactic.
What about just in general? Because it is something that we're seeing a lot more, that people just generating their own content with minimal, what I would call content architecture, which in my mind is training the model on me, my business, all of my all of my services, deeply nuanced, deeply, and we have giant prompt templates that are highly specific and written in a way that isn't just human writing. Um, what are your thoughts on that?
So I think the temptation, and I think this is kind of an outdated way of thinking. For a long time, people would think that just more content was better. And especially now, I just don't think that's the case anymore. I mean, think back to what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. That AI agent giving it answers that are 30 to 86 words. That's not more content. That's just better content, right?
Better
Let's
content,
let's, let's get to the point, basically.
right?
So what you're describing, which is let's take the time, if we're going to use AI to help us generate content, let's take the time to make sure that it's useful content, that it's on brand, that it's saying what we really want to say, and that we aren't, using the example I gave a few minutes ago, we aren't like talking about the history of the potato when really what we wanted to know is how to cook it, right?
Right,
If we're
right,
staying focused.
right, right, right.
And I think, like I say, the temptation is for people to say, "Wow, it's this new thing. I can make all this content." Where before I would have to like sit down and type it out, and it's not necessarily better though. So I think it's an art, and it's going to be an art that we'll have to pay attention to and adjust to over time. Using that tool can make content creation and good content creation more efficient. It can also just make more junk. And I think you really want to pay attention to what you're actually producing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an amazing tool. So where my head always goes to is there was a time when I was a one-man band trying to start a company, and I had no money, I had no resources, I had no connections, right? Just moved out to California and nothing. Um, I would have loved to have something like this back then, because I think I still believe that there's like, you know, the entrepreneurs that can be born through this era are, I think everyone's so focused on job loss, and my head's on like, no, no, start playing with this, figure it out, and then what are you passionate about? Build your business, right? Like, there's never been a time where it's been more inexpensive to start a business. Primarily, I'm talking a digital business, but even if you were doing something in the real world, I mean, the the availability of AI. So you think about any local service provider, like appointment bookings, like getting reviews, like all of the things that you would have to pay a lot of money for software in the past, you can start to bring in house a little bit, or at least get off the ground without spending a ton of cash. And so I do think that there's this, even if you're doing it that way, that's a good way to get started. However, um, I'm with you. Like, I see so much generic content now that is out there that all feels like the same. So it's not the same content, but it's the same rhythm of the content. It's the same this or that. Like, and we spend ton of hours on these things on a daily basis. And so I think over time you start to see this like pattern of output that is recognizable.
Mhm.
And so that's another aspect of it. I love the cut down on content, because I don't think anybody really wants to read an entire page. They want to get the meat and potatoes and decide what they want to do next. Um, I also think long form content is needed in certain time periods, but um, the more you put into it, the more you get out, is the way I've been thinking through all of these now. Is like, start to come up with an internal policy at your company of how you're going to design or implement internally. If you're a one-man band, one woman band, you do the same thing. Like, I think that the modest upfront effort to get the better output, we're talking hours now instead of weeks and months of planning and prep, which is also kind of cool.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think the the possibilities are pretty exciting. I mean, I have thought about this for a while, but if you think about new hire training, right? Where in the past someone would have to like sit down, literally sit next to another person, or screen share or whatever it is, to go through this content that they've put together and ask and answer questions and all that kind of thing. You can feed everything about what that person's role is now into a custom GPT, and they can ask and answer questions. And you know not that you want to eliminate the human from that process, but it's just as easier, right? The gain
Yeah.
in efficiency, which is kind of what I think you were talking about. Like, it's just you can get more done with less running around, doing research, chasing your tail, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So another said
I
it
think
differently. Yeah, you train the employee, but then you don't need to babysit them as much, because now they have their babysitter that they can ask and answer.
right. Yeah, all the information is there. So instead of, and again, this to me, this kind of circles back to the way we would search for things. Instead of them searching through, a bunch of PDFs or whatever it is, you can just ask a question, the machine does the searching and finds the answer.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's something we've implemented here, Web Vitality. We've hooked up our GPT to Drive and to Confluence, where we have all of our documentation. And I'll say one thing funny about it is it really gets you to align your documentation real quick, because uh, it's very it's very cool to be able to just chat with your bot and have it retrieve that SOP. um, but boy, do we have folders of archived SOPs and old processes that it doesn't differentiate through.
Huh? Yeah.
So I mean, I think that that's another like takeaway is good, clean data that you're feeding it in is going to serve you way more than just dumping a bunch of stuff into it.
Yep. Garbage in, garbage out. The oldest saying in the history of computer science.
Right, right. Very cool. So is there anything else that you're seeing, with clients reporting, we did mention the big shift in, 30% from searches drop, but I also think that I don't know if we hammered on that point enough, but the conversion metrics are relatively staying the same.
It's very industry dependent.
Okay,
And I don't have specific examples from different industries at the tip of my tongue, but um, you know, especially the one that is least impacted, I think, by this. And I bring this up because it's where, I have done a lot of work in my career. You have also local search is going to be less impacted by that clicking around, um, conversion based, right? And then if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. You have more trust in a local business, so you may be more inclined to go
sure.
to their site and convert there.
Right, right.
But this is a fluid thing, because I think, you know the shift, I think, is affecting e-commerce more first, but it's probably going to come to local. Uh,
Yeah.
so it just
So
kind of makes
I
sense.
saw.
I was going to say, since we're kind of talking, metrics and attribution, uh, kind of a wonky topic that came up this last month, um, but it is going to be relevant, for our market, for other marketers. Uh, it's technical, but the num equals 100 parameter. I know
Yeah,
you've
what's
seen
that
something
about?
on that. Yeah, it was a shortcut that a lot of tools would use to grab 100 Google organic search results all in one bite. It was more efficient. You don't have to pay for as many API calls back and forth to get information. Google eliminated the use of that right
Mm,
around September 10th to 14th. Um, so right about a month ago. So your data may look a little bit different. And talking about this, what I want to say is nothing literally changed about your rankings, about actual people who are visiting your site or converting. This is just a bot traffic thing. But you can look and see in a lot of cases, it looks like I have some data over here on my other screen here. 87% of sites saw a decline in overall impressions. So that's a big number.
say it again.
Percent of sites saw a
87%.
decline in overall impressions following this change. The kicker is, though, that those aren't people. This was bot traffic, right? This was a tool, whether and SEMrush, one of the biggest SEO tools out there, would use this. Uh, Many others. If you're gathering data, a White Spark who likes to do their own research projects
Right.
sometimes, they would use this tool to grab a whole bunch of information all at once, and it's just no longer available. So if particularly if you were a little bit further down in rankings, it's going to look like you lost a whole bunch of traffic because, a higher proportion of your traffic might have been from bots.
Right.
So
Okay.
nothing really changed, just the reporting changed. It probably will actually make the data more accurate
That's
because
what I
you're
was
going to
gonna say.
see yeah, you're going to see more actual users, especially if you weren't. So I know, like SEMrush, for example, they would just show the top 10 results rather than seeing 100 if you were doing like a sample, where am I ranking kind of search.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so if you were, and, you know, one of the nice things with AI is that, positions, 1, 2, and 3, which had always been, that's really where you want to
Most
be.
coveted.
The further out positions we're seeing a little bit more, and that's, ideally that's human traffic, not bot traffic. So
Right.
it's just one of those things that if you are a marketer, or if you are a small business owner who's looking at your data and saying what happened, nothing to panic about. It's just a change in reporting. It's less bot traffic. It's not less people traffic. So just
And
wanted
just
to
for
kind of
anybody,
circle back around to that. Yeah, go ahead.
no, no, yeah, just for anybody who doesn't know like parameters. So what you're talking about is at the end of like if you made a Google search, that URL that shows up there at the end of it, there's a question mark and then a parameter after that. You could append that URL with that num equals 100, which would then give you the 100 results.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
exactly. It was just a
And
way to quickly scrape that information.
you said a couple of things that I thought I hadn't thought of. So why this is important to just the regular business owner that's marketing their local business on a website or on the internet is because there's a lot of, vendors that use tools like SEMrush and White Spark and um, you know, it's it it impacts their ability to see deeper into and gather a lot of information. Now, I didn't think of this, but I love that it could democratize and maybe get it a more realistic or remove some of the bot traffic, which, people don't realize is happening all the time.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things that can seem kind of alarming at first, but we're going to end up with higher quality data as a result of this change, which is probably why Google did it.
Yeah.
Uh, they've always had kind of a cold relationship with people scraping their search results. I know at one point in the past at an employer I worked at, you were not allowed to use any tools that scraped search results if you wanted it was like a premier advertiser status with
Mm,
Google.
right.
They've always been kind of lousy at enforcing that, but that was their standard. Like Google did not want people scraping their results. So I think this is probably a reflection of that more than anything else. Google just saying, no, you don't get to scrape it, but it will result in higher quality data. And
The
the thing is,
irony,
yeah,
right?
it
Yeah.
isn't that it can't be scraped. It's that it's just going to cost you a lot more.
Slower.
You're going to
Yeah.
have to really want to.
Yeah. The irony is that that's exactly what Gemini's doing now. It's just scraping, you know what I mean? Doing a deep scrape really quick. On that same tip, I saw, we use Cloudflare for a number of different services, and one of the things that they just introduced is that you can actually put similar to robots TXT. You can put a don't let bots crawl my site, and um, I'm I've struggled with this. So I think that if you're a publisher or you're a big massive website, I wouldn't want bots to be grabbing it all and then I want people still coming to my site. I need people still coming to my site.
Mhm.
For the small local business that's marketing a 20, 30 page website, I kind of feel like I want you to scrape it and suggest me in your responses. And I'm not sure if that's exactly the way that it's working, but that's the perspective I'm kind of taking on it now. But I just think it's interesting too that Cloudflare has introduced this officially. This doesn't stop, other countries, I think, from hoovering up data, but it does stop like, um, our own US companies from being able to do it. What do you have you heard anything about that?
So not about Flare specifically. I'm tripping over my tongue there a little bit.
Oh,
Um,
good.
but yeah, it's been a hot topic, like, when to allow or when to not allow bots to crawl your site. Um, the obvious example would be, if you have content that's behind a paywall, right? Of course, you don't want bots to suck up all that information, right? Uh, if you are like a Wall Street Journal, right? They'll have a
Right,
certain number of articles that they'll allow to go out into like a Google News feed or something like that.
right.
That's where, to me, it's kind of a gray area. And I think it probably depends on how strong your brand already is. If you are, like I said, everybody knows who the Wall Street Journal is, or the New York Times, or if you already have a well-established brand that has a lot of trust, where people are going to want to actually go see your information that you've surfaced.
Right.
And by the way, that doesn't have to be a giant national brand. If you are a local, uh, here in Bend, Oregon, we have a local paper called The Source,
Hmm.
and it's free. They're your local, who's playing what
What's
concert
happening?
where, what brew
Yeah.
pub has a, open house or whatever, but they're a trusted source for that information also. So if you already have a strong brand, you might consider blocking the scrapers, because your
Right.
brand is going to get diluted a little bit. Um, but it's something you really want to think carefully about. Your example where, I'm a local business, I'm a local shop, I have a brick and mortar. It's hard to see a reason why you would want to block your information, or if
Right.
you're a service provider, right? If you do
Yeah.
services
Please
in
take it.
an
Please,
area.
please share it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why, you know, people are trying to find you rather than already knowing about you.
Right. Right. Very cool. Well, I mean, that was a great, thank you so much for joining. I think that was a great, just 360 around what's happening in Google search and what you're seeing right now. Anything else that you wanted to leave as a final takeaway? If not, just let everyone know where they can get a hold of you. And thanks again.
Thank you. No, nothing. The only thing that is kind of that last little nugget that I've been hearing more and more about is dynamic content. So maybe
Ooh, tell me
let's
more.
have this be a topic that we maybe circle back to on
Okay, I
our
like it.
next discussion. Um, we've always tended to think of, specifically with web content, as, it being static, right? We want, Googlebot to know exactly what we have, or we want ChatGPT to know exactly what we have, so it can't change all the time for everybody. But as we think about incorporating an AI agent into our, experience, that's going to lead to more dynamic content. It could possibly lead to a better user experience if, when that user comes in,
It's
our,
made for them.
and again, custom trained, yeah, exactly, our custom trained bot, rather than saying, well, here's all our pages, here's a menu of stuff for you to navigate through and hopefully figure out what you want. We can bring it and say, oh, it looks like, you searched from this kind of business, or, it'll be
Right,
an
right.
interesting dynamic. But I think there's an opportunity there to, in the same way that our AI search agents are taking all these different websites and summarizing the content for when someone lands on your site or your application, or, however it is you're communicating with them, to say, I think this is what you're looking for, rather than, well, here's all my stuff, hope you find it, right?
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing that I've heard more and more about lately.
Yes, we're gonna dig into this more next time because I'm really interested in that topic, and I think there's a really beneficial side to that, and then a scarier side where I feel like I don't have my choice anymore because it's just telling me what I should want. But we'll put a pin in that till next time. Tell everyone where they can connect with you.
Bluepoolmarketing.com, bluepoolmarketing@gmail.com. Uh, Look me up, and I have a phone number on there also. If I was a little smarter, I would have had it right ready, but I
All
don't.
good. We'll put in the show notes. So thanks again, Eric. This has been
Perfect.
really
Thank
great.
you.
Yep.
All right.
Take
Bye.
care. See ya.